Hey everybody, this is Dave Putz from JKP Holdings. Alongside me, as always, Mr. Nathan Turner. How are you, man?
Hello. Good morning. You're doing very well. Doing very well.
Awesome. I'm glad to see you connect for a few minutes. I know that we've been talking a lot lately. It's interesting that as worlds connected, and we've been doing this for almost 2 years now, which is shocking.
Yeah, we just kind of discovered that the other day, and I'm like, oh man, it's been a while, I guess. Wow. How about that?
It's been great. It's been cool. We've had some awesome guests on, which we'll get to in a minute, one we're having on today. But we're excited about a few things that we got going on. Before we get into that, some housekeeping and stuff. First and foremost, for those who have not signed up, Nathan is live with Diversified Mortgage Expo. So DME is going to be in Nashville this year in June. I encourage you guys to go take a look at it. It's going to be like no conference you've been to before. It's bridging the gap between note buyers and note originators.
Yeah, one of my major things about the whole conference is I want buyers and sellers to come together and not just like, hi, how are you? Like I'm talking, we're going to make deals. I want you to be walking away and saying, okay, so Monday morning, send me over the collateral file and I'll review it. And then within a week, we'll close kind of thing. Like I want deals to really come out of this. So I'm excited to bring that together. Besides being a ton of fun, it's Nashville. It's going to be a really great time. So
axe throwing and everything. It's going to be a really cool thing. So I think that what we're trying to do is put a bridge between two different groups of people, right? Originators, wrap loan creators, as well as note buyers. But we don't know how each other work. So we're going to get into what we're going to talk today about, but we're feeling that this is the world we're going to live in for the next period of time because the returns are great for both sides.
Returns are great. And then with rising interest rates, people can't qualify for a bank. Banks have this, very narrow window of what they can and cannot do. When you're dealing with people rather than banks, you'll find they're far more flexible. And that interest rate may not get any better for you. It probably even is a little bit worse, but you'll be able to afford a home. And that's really what the originators bring to the table. So
absolutely,
I love that side of the business. I've done a bunch of originations. That's how I started in notes. So I'm excited to kind of come full circle and start talking to a bunch of these originators now again.
And before we get there, Nathan and I do run a advanced note investing weekly class. For those who are not familiar with the class about, we talk about, of course, the big one is the bid calculator. We work with a non-performing bid calculator that you can literally plug and play tomorrow and get working. Not a simple performing calculator, which we do teach, but we talk about that. We talk about due diligence, systems, managing your systems, managing your providers. And those who join the classes have been blown away in their experienced investors too joining us.
Yeah, and that's the thing where, we're not looking for necessarily fresh off the boat beginners. We're looking for people that have some education, that have taken maybe a class or two, read a couple of books, whatever it's been, but they have some kind of education behind them or even a little bit of experience. We want to take those people and really help them ramp it up because this is a fantastic business, but you have to know what you're doing and more education, the better. And
we're running into too many people who just don't get it, right? They don't know the math, which is crucial in the space, right? We talk about don't bidding on BPO or UPB because it's a byproduct and it really takes out the calculations of the note, which is what you're buying. You're buying a note. So we talk about a lot of that stuff. And the non-performing calculator is very, very big because you're including states differences, you're including timeline differences and costs, statute of limitations, everything that comes into play. So
there's a lot to it. So educate yourself because this is not
absolutely
real estate. We've said that over and over again. This is not real estate. This is attached to real estate. This is adjacent to real estate. It's related to real estate, but it's not.
Yes. So if you are originating notes, hopefully you get the note math. If you don't, let us know. If you're a note buyer and you don't get the math, let us know. But what we're trying to do today is really bridge the gap by bringing in somebody who's extremely experienced that could talk for probably 3 days about this topic. I'm bringing him in, and we're screaming him in now. Scott Horne is from Texas, and he's been dealing with originating notes and loans and things like that, and all other facets, which we're bringing back on for years and years. So, Scott, thank you and welcome to our Friday Live.
Well, great to be here, guys. The topic that I love to talk about. Well, the only thing I love talking more about that's more fun is me. And I'm kidding. No.
This is good. So we wanted to know, first of all, like where did you come from? How did you get into what you're doing now, and what's kind of been your progression? And
you'd realize that's a 2-day conversation, right?
Try to keep it to around 5 minutes or so.
So real quick, I'm a civil engineer undergrad who went to law school because I graduated when I was 20 years old and I wasn't ready to grow up yet.
Right.
And went to law school, got my law degree with post practice law, got a job. And this goes back before y'all's time, probably to 1984, 85. And you may remember what happened then, which was probably a huge real estate crash that went on. So my one job I had lasted for a whole year, and I was in a real estate development company as an in-house counsel. And when you're coming out in the street, what you don't realize when you're a young kid, no one's hiring in the middle of a major recession, you know, at least not in my world, they weren't. And you've got to figure out what you want to do. And I could go through the litany of things on how I started learning things, from making creative offers on properties, just trying to figure something to do, to property management, which is really where I learned to do things. And you know, when I teach classes here in the Texas marketplace, I often tell people, you know, I went out and I put together 100 duplexes to buy at one time. Put together the money, everything that we call it a syndication when you marry it all together. And then they changed the tax laws, then just cratered everything in the market. And of course, that deal died. Well, most people would just walk away. And instead, I just called the banks who were foreclosing on this stuff, asked them what they were going to do. And they needed help. And they hired me to be their property manager for these 100 duplexes. Of course, I had never managed anything in my entire life. Spent the next 3 weeks in the SMU Law Library trying to read up and learn how to do it. And back in those days, guys, we had to use this novel thing called a typewriter to type your own leases and all this kind of stuff. And when you do that, you'll learn it. It ingrains in your head. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one thing to the next, over the next many years in the commercial real estate world, trying to figure things out. What you don't realize back then when you're young, real estate doesn't move in a real estate crash and recession. You simply don't know what you don't know. And anyway, got involved, had a general contractor friend of mine who was in one of these duplexes who I had met. We decided to buy our first house. We got a private lender to do it, put it together, and sold it. That was the first deal we did. Down the road, I had a young man come in my office one day and asked me if I knew what equity was under FHA. We kind of hooked up and we started buying houses back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, using what is now known as hard money. Of course, back then it wasn't called hard money. Mm-hmm. And we were only doing 1 or 2 houses a year, and we were learning the business. And over time, we built and grew that, where we were actually, by about 1992, we were buying 20 plus houses a month and rehabbing. And when you're doing that, what you learn real quick is when you're buying 20 houses every month, they're all rehabs. You can't sell them for cash, you know, the next month. They take time. And by the time you do 2 or 3 months, you've got 60 houses in portfolio that are in some form of construction or marketing. And what you learn is you learn the creative finance game. And back then we were able to do things such as lease options, lease purchases, contractor deeds. And we found a mechanism to get our properties income producing. And we would generate mortgages that we would hold in escrow. And we learned the note game back then. Fun story is, I don't know if you know the name Ken D'Angelo or not. Mm-hmm. Ken is the guy who started Homevestors, was here in Dallas. And so we were flipping houses back and forth with Ken, and we'd sit around and we'd just brainstorm on how to how to do things, how to make things happen, which is what we all try to do in our industry, right? As investors, how can we buy notes better, houses better, whatever it might be. And anyway, we would put together the system. And we started selling notes, and we didn't even know we could sell notes back in those days. And they were wraparound loans. But of course, when our note buyers would buy them, they'd pay off the underlying debt. And we were selling the whole note at that time. And you create a different strategy. And we moved away from the retail world, almost 100% exclusive, into the creative finance world of either buying homes with cash or our bank financing, doing our wrap loans, seasoning, and selling them into the secondary marketplace. And back in those days, we weren't doing a lot of creative finance deals on the front end of the transaction because you didn't have to. And over time, we became one of the largest providers of owner finance paper into the secondary marketplace. You learn that industry very well. Then, of course, we come across good old 2008, 2009, when the whole world caved in around our ears again, which is what really changed a lot of things as they changed more compliance issues, et cetera. The banking world changed quite a bit. And the creative finance world really started to blossom at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And along the way, this is where what they call buying homes subject to the existing debt came into play. Buying with a wraparound seller financing. And then a lot of people were also selling the homes using wraparound mortgages, which is another one of the things that you guys are running into, right? In 2012, 2013, they start changing here in Texas. Our property code is changing to adapt to this a little bit. The SAFE Act is initiated. Good old Dodd-Frank is initiated, which actually covers us smaller people as a small creditor. And you have to start to adapt to those items. Prior to that, the loan servicing game didn't exist for owner finance paper.